Okay.
All right, so we're joined from Houston, Texas, by uh, two-time America's Got Talent finalists, by MBA recipient, by Burn Advocacy Survivor champion, author, speaker, social media personality, Kechi Okwuchi. We are so excited to have you with us today. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're also joined by my friends Kathy Evans and Meredith Portera at Ridgeland High School and Madison Central High School. And we're recording this for all of our students in Madison County Schools and our YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for taking just a few minutes for us today. It is a huge thrill for all of us.
Oh, thank you for having me. So sorry I'm late. I know you guys, it's a tight schedule, it's a school schedule. So yeah, just thank you for your patience and I'm happy to be here.
Well, that's awesome. Now, uh, for those of we have talked about you a little bit in class, but for those who don't know, you're from Abuja, Nigeria, um, beautiful country, the capital of Nigeria. So, your life changed when you were in high school. So, why don't you take us through just briefly what you experienced to kind of put you on this next level to give you this platform?
Mm. So, like you said, I am from Nigeria. I was born and raised there, and I went to high school there. I went to a boarding school in Nigeria. Um, the accident happened while I was in this school. So it was my final year of high school. This was on December 10th, 2005, and I was 16 years old. So on this day, it was a Saturday, I was actually heading home for Christmas at the end of the first semester with other kids from my school who lived in the same area that I did. So the school is based in Abuja. And those of us who live on the eastern side of Nigeria or the south, wherever it is, they usually group all of us into one like travel group to just make things easier and just makes more sense, more efficient. So this is a group of students I've always traveled with, whether it's by bus or by plane. More recently, we'd be using planes. So flying was nothing unusual to any of us. But the 60 of us were heading home for the Christmas holidays. And it was a usual group of students who travel like, towards the east because we lived in the east. So this is an hour and a half flight. Again, normal. This is not unusual. We're all used to it by now. The day started like any other day. For me, at least, I remember it just being very casual. Woke up very early, ate breakfast in the school cafeteria, and boarded the school buses to get to the airport to wait for our plane. And everything went normally. We got to the airport. The flight was delayed, which is again normal. And we waited until the plane arrived, and then we embarked. We left the airport and boarded the plane. So it was 60 students, so myself included, 60 of us, and then other passengers. So it was a regular commercial flight, 109 passengers in total, including the flight crew. And plane took off. Everything was good. We took off. We're fine. Everything was good. None, just uneventful flight, like flights should be for the most part. And it was towards the ending of the flight, like 15 minutes left, that everything just went to hell. Essentially, the plane started its descent, which is what they do when they're about to, to land. And the pilot made the announcement over the intercom saying, we are getting ready to land, put on your seatbelts and just, we're going to be there in like 15, 20 minutes. And then as he kept going and the plane kept descending, it started like just shaking, which is just regular turbulence. No one freaks out at this point because we're all used, we know that with flying comes turbulence, as a part of it. And it's nothing to freak out over. It happens all the time. But then it started to get really like exaggerated and just so it just persisted essentially. And the more it went on, the worse it got. And of course, at that point, like you're trying to be okay, but then as it's getting worse, you're getting more and more tense, you're getting more and more anxious. And I could just at that time, like it was quiet in the cabin, but like I could feel like the tension level just like rising as it just continued and kept getting worse until the lady, like there was this lady at the back, a random passenger, but she was like from the back of the plane, just hearing a random scream from the back of the plane. And that was what like just kind of set everyone else off. It was just chaos. People were screaming. We're all still strapped in, obviously. So it wasn't like we're running around, but like everyone was like screaming at the top of their lungs and praying at the top of their lungs and shouting God's name, shouting Jesus, and just freaking out. And I remember just sitting there in my seat. I was in the front seat, so in an aisle seat close to the front of the plane. And one of my closest friends was in the aisle seat next to mine. And I remember just sitting there, just shocked, really. because it was weird because it was like this was such a movie like scenario, and I couldn't register like the fact that this was reality, and it was just like this doesn't happen like this. I was just in this state of like denial and shock, like this doesn't happen. And my last memory is holding my friend's hand. She was in the aisle seat next to mine, and we held hands. And my last memory is holding her hand and looking into her eyes. And I remember distinctly this scraping metal sound that just kind of like jarred my brain. And then I must have blocked out at that point, because my next vivid memory after that is opening my eyes, and 5 weeks had passed, and I was lying down in the hospital bed in South Africa, Johannesburg, and opening my eyes from a coma. So that was how everything changed that day. I got, information filled in. I understood, during the time I was passed out, that the plane had crashed, exploded, and it took the lives of 107 of 109 people on board. I didn't find this fact out until much later, but I sustained third-degree burns over 65% of my body. So that just means everything from my head to my feet burned except for my tummy and my back, which is that incidentally were areas that they used to cover up the rest of me eventually. So that was when my journey as a burn survivor started. And yeah, life just changed dramatically, not just for me and my family, but for Nigeria, really. Yeah, because the scale of the accident was just unprecedented. So.
Yeah, and you've undergone over 100 surgeries to put skin to move the skin, and we're not, obviously I don't want to show it, but if anybody wants to look up some of the after accident pictures, they are pretty horrific. You did have flesh literally burn off of your bones. It was just the pain that you went through.
Yeah, all of it
Physically just had to be on another level. And you look amazing, by the way. It is just incredible what the surgeons there in South Africa and Texas have done. All right, so all that you spent years in recovery.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No, you're very welcome. You spent years in recovery. Again, over 100 surgeries, and I know you've been open about you had the neck surgery to get just range of motion, to be able to open your eyes normally, things that we take for granted that you really had to struggle with just almost to learn how to do again. But that gave you a platform to where you were to inspire tons of people and carry on the memory of the friends that you lost, and that led you to go to in 2017 to go to America's Got Talent. And I thought that was a funny story that your friends signed you up for that without telling you.
Without telling me. She changed my life. Like she didn't realize what she was doing then, but she ended up, I was too afraid to take myself. I probably would never have taken, honestly, if not for her. So
and then in 2019, you got the golden buzzer from Simon Cowell, and that's something we have in common. I've actually met him before as well when I was in Los Angeles. I think that's pretty cool.
Really?
But at the golden, I met him. I met him at the Tonight Show in 2003 in Los Angeles. So that's something we have in common, that we both met Simon Cowell, even though it was 16 years apart. But yeah, you did get the golden buzzer, which was a great television moment, which anybody can look up on YouTube. It was just a great TV moment and a great moment for you and your family as well. And it's also, you've also you've written a book, More Than My Scars. So tell us a little bit about the book.
Yes.
I bought my copy. I'm looking forward to reading it. So just tell us where that inspiration came from, and how it really speaks on using a tragedy to really inspire so many people.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm so grateful that you bought my book. Yeah, like you said, my book is called More Than My Scars. And I think the main thing about this book is I wanted to share the nitty-gritty parts of my story that people would not normally encounter just by meeting me or hearing about me or watching me on the show. I feel like a lot of that was glossed. It's just natural, really, because I don't talk about it, but like it was glossed over in this process of me becoming more exposed and getting more people to know who I am. They meet me already here at the stage where I've done all those surgeries. I've done a lot of corrective stuff, and I'm in a place where I'm feeling confident and good about myself, so that's the stage of like people are meeting me, encountering me in that late stage of my healing and my journey. And while it makes I feel like that kind of I guess introduction to a person can just kind of give this sheen where it's like they're so amazing, and how do they do this? Well, the whole point of the book was to show exactly how that process was for me to get to becoming the person that they met. and to show that it was not anything, it wasn't glamorous, there was nothing special or amazing about it. It was hard, it was very difficult. I struggled throughout and fought a lot against a lot of the things that I've accepted now, So I wanted to show that to let people who are going through trauma, whether it's burn survivors or otherwise, that they are not alone, that, I want them to feel seen. I want them to know as they read the story that the struggles that they go through with just recovering from trauma, it's something that I can relate to. And since I'm in a place where I'm perceived to have overcome a lot of this stuff, I wanted them to be able to see that it's possible for them as well if they're still struggling. So in so doing, they read the story and they realize that it's not like some amazing miraculous process. They see that it's a long process for everyone, including myself, including someone else who they perceive to have successfully overcome their trauma. So I think that was the main thing. I wanted to show all those gritty parts and all the very not so pretty parts that I had to plow through to become the Kechi that you see here today. It's a struggle and a difficult thing for anyone, no matter what kind of trauma we're talking about, whether it's burn surviving or any other kind, really, all are valid. And I wanted people to feel seen in that way. So it's really just my story, what I just talked about, but like in a very condensed form where I talk about the entire, like my time in South Africa, which was 7 months right after the accidents. And then after I transitioned back to Nigeria, and I was there briefly, and how that went, and being just the healing process and the interacting with new people that were not like my family, and how like society essentially reacted to Kechi when she first came out of the hospital with all these scars. And then I talk about my identity and my faith, and these were things that I had like that became foundational for me and became foundational for who I am right now. And I moved to America and I talk about that process as well. So it really just kind of details my life in terms of my journey as a burn survivor to show, I guess, growth, and then to show like, it's a long process for anyone. So hopefully it inspires people to kind of feel more seen and more motivated to just believe truly that, there is life after trauma, and it can be a pretty incredible life, if you let it. So that's really the point of me sharing my story in my book, and I hope that that's what people receive when they read it. So
That's awesome. Now, no, one thing that floored me is when you said as a teenager in high school, you were obsessed with your looks. You were concerned about how pretty you were all the time. But this tragedy has really showed you what kind of person you are on the inside and shown that to the world. And I think that's important because, especially teenagers now, they're so obsessed with how they look and how other people perceive the way they look. But, you're a perfect example of, your look completely changed. But if people have seen the person you are in your spirit and heard your voice and getting to read your story. Now, despite all that,
thank you so much. Yeah, that's a big.
You're very welcome. Now, despite all that, despite having a unspeakable physical trauma, mental trauma, you were able to get your degree, your BBA at St. Thomas University in Houston, and then got an MBA, Master's of Business Administration at St. Thomas, and now you work with a great infrastructure engineering firm, Sterling Infrastructure there in Houston. I mean, talk about some big time projects that they're doing there. So talk a little bit about that, because that is a great company and it's a great field that we need to get some more young people in.
Okay, I'm happy to. So while I still do my traveling and my gig work, which is what I do when I travel and sing or speak, that's really great and something I hope I can do for the rest of my life. But I obviously, being educated, being in academia for so long, I wanted to be able to use my degrees for something, and I wasn't able to explore those options with like the creativity side of Kechi. So this was an opportunity for me to explore that in a field that I had never actually considered being a part of until it was presented before me, as an opportunity. So that was something that actually sprouted from one of my very last classes under the master's program. It was a sustainability class it was basically about that and how companies are trying to be more ESG friendly. And there was a class project where we got to meet someone from a natural company who we're going to work with to help them build their like disclosure, kind of like their ESG story surrounding what it is they already do, or then and making suggestions about what they can do to improve that story, because people are more conscious about that kind of thing now. So that was how I met the lady who is my direct boss right now. Her name is Mary, and she was a representative for the company, Sterling. She came to the school, and my class worked with her to put together this really cool disclosure that they actually used on their website and in their last year's ESG report, which was very cool to see that in like our picture there and stuff in the actual company. So I think through that interaction, because I kind of spearheaded the project, and that was it wasn't really, it was kind of like well, I guess it was kind of decided, but yeah, I kind of made sure everything went well. I was like the touch point really for everyone in class to make that project come together. And so when it came to presenting it to the board, because we presented our findings to the board of the company. And when we did that, I kind of just made sure everything was organized and just try to make sure that everyone said their piece. And so I think she just really liked my I guess my confidence and my just the way that I presented the information that we had researched all semester. She felt like, oh, and I really tried my best to understand, which is what all of us in class did because everyone did great. But I think I stood out to her. So as time passed, after the project ended, this was in December-ish or November 2022, I started like job hunting really. I just joined LinkedIn and everything in 2023. And while I was for jobs and applying for different things, she reached out to me and she was like, can we have a conversation? Because I want to pick your brain about something. I'd like to, just talk to you about potential, helping us out with like some marketing communications, social media specifically, ESG, helping me out with that. And just continue the conversation from when we worked together, like, when I was in class, like in the class. So we had breakfast, we talked, and she just felt like I would be a great fit. And she wanted me to literally just come and work under her to help her out with what she does, which is, investor relations and marketing communications for the company. So that's pretty much how I got that job, which was really cool because I had been applying and getting either no response or rejections, which is very normal for job applications, I'm aware. But like, I just found it so cool that this is a job that based on like a previous interaction. So I think that just the main lesson here for me was you just never know who is going to be able to feed into your life
Absolutely.
in some way. So I think that's people out there, every networking opportunity is an opportunity to sell yourself and to be a good person, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm glad you
And
said that
to
because
also,
no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'm glad you said that because I say that all the time about, these kids get so subconscious and so upset we make them do these presentations in front of a class. It's not to be mean. Everybody's not comfortable speaking in front of large groups like you and I am. But you just said perfectly, you don't know who you're going to meet. If you make a good first impression on somebody, look, you're a perfect example. You're somebody
that's
that
it.
has visible injury. You're an immigrant to this country.
Mhm.
And obviously you're a black woman, but you were able to get a job at one of the biggest and hottest companies in Texas right now, at Sterling. And it was
Yep.
because you sold yourself and had that confidence to be able to communicate. So I think it's very important. These kids are stuck on the TikToks and the phones. It's important to be able to exude confidence because people like you are perfect. If you have every reason in the world to not be confident, but yet you didn't let that stop you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think, yeah, it's definitely important to everything you just said. It's really, really important to kind of always be making sure you're putting your best foot forward. And honestly, the things like you said about presentations and stuff, those things, as tasking and upsetting as they are, whether you like it or not, it's training you for that kind of public speaking scenario, which any of us can encounter in life at any point. And you don't have to be comfortable with it. You just have to be able to do it. And the only way you can do that is if you practice it and you take it seriously. One other thing I'm going to say that really helped me also, or like might help somebody, is to, because you never know what particular thing you do would actually have like a positive effect or ripple effects down the line. Everything that you do well. Essentially, put your best foot forward all the time in anything that you find yourself, even if it seems silly. If you're gonna dedicate some of your time to something, then you've given that thing importance. So if you have any kind of thing you're doing, whether it's school stuff, presentations, whether it's out of school stuff, like if you end up like on a show where you're like performing, or anything in between those two. I mean, just it doesn't have to be something incredible, just always, because for me, the main thing is to do whatever I do as well as I possibly can. So I have no regrets. And this is with anything in my life, whether it's AGT or just making sure that I complete an assignment properly, or just making sure I clean my room properly. Whatever it is, I think it's important to do whatever you apply yourself to well. That's a really important. I think if you can do that, you're never gonna, like, anytime down the line, you would never know what it is that someone saw that they reached out to you about. Like, but you just know that as you're living your life, you're doing everything you can to the best of your ability. So I think
agree.
that's also something that I would advise.
I agree. Now, before I get to the students' questions, I did want to talk about one last thing, and that is, your voice changed after the accident, and that led you also to be able to write some original
Yeah.
music, and your album is now available for also to buy. So just talk briefly
Yes, it
about
is.
that, about how you were able to write music based on your own experience.
Yes. So yeah, my voice thing, yeah, that, no one till today, I don't really understand what happened. No one does. There was not, we never really explored like a scientific or medical reason for this change, but there was definitely a very obvious change in my voice, in my tone, and my clarity after the accident that was not there before. And I remember the first time I opened my mouth and I sang, it was the Kelly Clarkson song was playing by my, like, on the speaker by my bed. And my mom just kind of turned to me. I was like, what is that? Like, that's not how you sounded. And I was like, I know, I don't know what's going on, you know? And I felt like we didn't really question it much because it was like this one good and random thing that came out of this horrible situation. And so I just ran with it. And someone like me who grew up with music and loves, like, I guess like anyone else, loved music so much, being able to, I've always loved singing and I had a good voice before, don't get me wrong, but just having something like that happen and you make my voice change in this way, right? Like after the accident, made me very attached to the concept of music and singing because it was something I could do no matter how injured I was, no matter how painful my procedures were, no matter how hard it was to deal with like the physical issues, the physical I guess fallout really of the accidents, whether it's the itching or the wounds. I could sing in any state. That was something that nothing physical could take away from me. And so because of that, music became such an important part of my healing, and it definitely healed parts within me that no amount of it, and being able to sing and have fun with it. And then when I got to America, Shriners, the hospital that took care of me, made it part of my therapy. So I had
Wow.
physical therapy and I have music therapy. I had the
Wow.
bond really. And Shriners, incidentally, that hospital in Galveston, that is the first place I ever performed, quote unquote. It was a concert we put on for the kids that were in the hospital, other burn survivors. And it was me and the music therapy group and another patients. And we put together this little cute hospital band and we performed for the kids. And that was my first time, like, it was 2008, and that was my first time feeling like, oh, this is a pretty cool experience, singing on stage. Now, of course, I was not going to go on to like perform on some other stage, and like it wasn't something that I was like, oh yeah, one day I'm going to do this. I just realized that I liked that feeling and just kept it within me because I just didn't feel like I would never know how God's going to use situations in your life. But yeah, that's music just became so important to me, and myself in that way was just very unique for me. It was very cathartic and like nothing really could compare. So when I got the opportunity to be on the show, I was able to see people that were not my family, people that didn't know me and had no reason to make me feel good about myself, actually appreciating my voice and making me feel like there might be something here to explore beyond just singing like for my family at home, or singing in church, which I only recently started doing right before the show. And so once the show, people responded that way to my voice, it made me get a little more confidence in my sound. And of course, the exposure, gave me access to people who watched it and saw me that were songwriters, producers, engineers, sound engineers, and people who basically are in that world. And so through the show and that exposure, I was able to get a lot of connections to these kinds of people. And that's what led to my very first single being released, because the first song I released was actually written by two men who watched me on the show and were literally inspired by my presence on the show to write that song, to the point that when I heard it, it was like I wrote it. It was so perfect. So that was when I released Don't You Dare in 2018. And then eventually, with more and more of these music connections coming, I was able to put together an album, which was really a love project because a lot of people volunteer their time and their efforts and their skills and gifts to make that album happen. So it was very, very fun. And the more I delved into this world, the more I realized how much I loved it. So I started working on songwriting and, putting my own touch in songs that I had released that, you know, I could co-write with these other writers, and then actually having original songs completely written by just me that I'm hoping I can put out very soon, because that would be more. I tend to write more inspirational kind of stuff, which I guess makes sense because, you know, you write what you know. So my stuff, my kind of writing tends to come out more either Christian inspired or inspiration, motivation inspired, really. So yeah, so I hope that eventually I can share that with people. And it's really just, so far it's a fun process, you know, just creating in that way. So I hope that when the time comes to release it, people are responsive like they have been in the past. So yeah.
It's awesome.
And then
Well,
I think, oh no, I think that's all you asked about my music. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I do have a few questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can. And if anybody from the other schools has any, just put it in the chat. This is Gabriel G. He's a senior, one of our football players here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, what was going through your head the moment you got the golden buzzer?
Oh my God. That honestly, if you, I feel like if you watch and you can see from my face, like this was completely unexpected. I did not, I not just was it unexpected, but then I was also misdirected on purpose by Simon because I had no clue that was going to happen. And after I sang, I immediately hated everything. Like you know, when they do say you're your worst critic, I just remember after singing, so upset. And then the judges give their response, and then goes, I think it's good to see you again on the show, but I didn't really like it that much. So once he said that to me, I was like, yep, I already knew. Don't even say anything. I knew that this was not, I knew it was trash. And so in my mind, I was like preparing my thank you speech, thank you for having me. I'm grateful to have made it this far in the first place. Thank you for the opportunity. Like I was ready to go home. Like I was like, oh well, it happens. And then he goes, I loved it. And then like literally it happened like in slow motion for me. I saw him stand up and then move across the table. And then I was like, the confetti started flying around me. I was just like, this is literally unbelievable. Are you for real? Like, is this actually for real? And before I knew it, I was bawling. I was just crying. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I could not believe that he felt so moved by the performance that I felt like was just so subpar that he actually felt that it was worth something like that. I mean, I feel like that was a gift that he gave to me. And then the response of everyone. And then of course my mom I just knew, because once I started crying, I knew she was crying wherever she was in the audience, and it just made me cry more. And honestly, it was just a really not it's a moment that can't really be replicated in that feeling. It's a very special feeling.
Yeah, and it was a
To be acknowledged
great,
like that
great
and to
television
be
moment as well.
appreciated like that.
Yeah. This is DeKayla
I'm
Williamson.
glad.
She's a
It did come
sophomore.
out pretty good.
This is DeKayla Williamson. She's a sophomore, one of our cheerleaders here. And this is a great question. And she
Yes.
asks, after you've had so many surgeries, have you ever felt nervous before and after each surgery?
So I think because of the frequency of it and how many I had, even though there was always a certain amount of risk involved in going under anesthesia and waking up and all that, I just never considered a possibility where I would not wake up. It was just never something that I worried about. Before every surgery, we sign the consent forms, and then, I go for the surgery and I come out. Like, I never had any fear that I would someday or for some reason not open my eyes. I think, but I can think of two that would be the most distinct. First one being, after having been in a plane crash, I feel like most other things, like most other things in life, really seem very like low. Like I feel like I already that honestly, I just felt like if I didn't die then I really don't think it's gonna be during a surgery. Just to be fair, I could not be scared of that because I had already gone through something that was ridiculous. So to me, it was just like, look, whatever happens at this point. So that's one thing. Second thing was also because I had so much family and friends praying for me and supporting me that I just always felt so protected and so at ease whenever it was time for surgery. And then let's not forget, like, I think also where you are also plays a big role too. And Shriners is absolutely incredible from all the way from like every level of staff, whether it's non-medical or medical. That hospital just makes you feel like everything's going to be okay. Quite like just quite frankly. So so that's usually the feeling that I had going in. My doctors and my surgeons were amazing, always available to talk, always available to like explain things to you. Like you're treated like a person. So I think that also helped me in just being comfortable about the concept of going in and out. And that's pretty much I think that's it. Like I didn't feel any fear ever really. I was already doing surgeries even before I could remember, because before I opened my ass from the coma, I'd had like 10. So it
Wow.
just seemed like, this is just something that's gonna be my life for a long time. So it just became like normal life. Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But first of all, a couple things before we go. First of all, catchyofficial.com. That's where you have all your information, your social medias. You got over 1 million followers between all your platforms. That's where they can buy your music, your books for sale on Amazon, More Than My Scars. But before we go, we have 2 other schools watching with us, and I've got a room full here with me now. You're a great example of adversity, trauma, obstacles, but yet you've become more successful than most people that have never had any of that could ever imagine. And it's just such an inspiration to see what you've done. So what can these young people, especially I got a lot of seniors in here with me now. We got some seniors watching at these other schools. They're getting ready to move on to that next step in life, and trauma is going to happen. Obstacles are going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
What can they do to overcome those obstacles to follow in the footsteps of great people like yourself?
First of all, thank you so much. That's such high praise. Yeah, being a senior, this is a transition moment for y'all. It's a big deal. Like, yeah, people, I know everyone makes like it's a big deal. It actually is a big deal because it's you're stepping into a different kind of life, a different kind of independence and responsibility. And it's a lot of pressure, no doubt. But one thing that I think always helped me while I was in college was when things got really hard, I just try to remind myself that, look, for you to get to this point you're at right now, Kechi, you have already overcome so much.
Absolutely.
So history, let that history be an indication of the fact that you do have what it takes to overcome this next thing. So I think I feel like as human beings, we do tend to undermine really our capacity for resilience. And like it's infinite. As long as you're alive, your resilience is something that will never stop growing and expanding. And you realize this as you overcome obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. By the time you're 18, you've accomplished and overcome so much, and you're still here. I think you being here right now in this moment, us being where we are right now, present here, we are examples of the fact that we actually are pretty strong. We're made of strong stuff, and we can overcome multiple levels of whatever difficulties that life throws at us. The fact that we're here means that we have already overcome so much. So I feel like you've come this far, and you can definitely go further. Your life history proves and shows that you can go further. So for me, that was always something that I held on to, and was something that I used. Of course, it's not easy, but it takes some time and discipline to really remind yourself in those very low moments or overwhelming moments that, listen, I am an example of hard work and resilience already. So I already know that I have it in me to overcome this next
Absolutely.
obstacle. Because in the past, the ones I overcame before, they felt like they were huge, but I did it. And so I know I can do it again. So hopefully that helps somebody, and is not too generic, but it's just something that I personally use. And so, I hope it helps someone too.
Well, again, thank you so much. I know I can speak for everybody that we were so inspired by this, and you continue to be an inspiration to so many people. And I'm glad I got to finally meet you. It's really a huge thrill for me. But again, Kechi Okwuchi, all the way from Houston, Texas, catchyofficial.com. Go check out all of her music and check out her book wherever books are sold. Thank you so much for taking some time for us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Thank you, really.
All right. I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.